What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be showing you some methods for mixing one mic drums. For people who are just starting out or don't have access to a crazy drum miking setup, learning how to work with one mic drums is a great skill. Also, for some genres such as indie and DIY music, the roomy and kind of lo-fi nature of one mic drums is preferable. So let's head over to the computer and look at some methods for mixing one mic drums. Okay, so here we are in Pro Tools, and I have an example of some one mic drums that my friend recorded for a song a while back. I think this was done with an SM57. Let's give it a listen. Alright, so it sounds like one mic drums. Things are a little splashy, kick drum and the snare are a little undefined, and it sounds kind of narrow. So let's go about fixing some of those things. First thing I'd do is just add an EQ and basically look for three main frequencies to boost and cut. You want to kind of look at the high end, the cymbals, maybe adding some sizzle or maybe taking away some of that kind of harsh sound. The mid-range, you can sometimes boost the snare, and then the low, you can kind of isolate the kick. So let's go about doing that. So that's kind of a harsh frequency. We might pull that out a little bit, and then add a little sparkle to the cymbals. So that sounded like maybe some of the snare body. Yep. We'll add some of that, and then maybe add a little more bass. So this is just a rough example, but you'll get the idea. Alright, so let's do a comparison. Alright, so it's on its way. Alright, the next thing I would generally do is slightly compress the kit. This can generally be done either with the BF76 or the CLA2, or really any other compressor, but I kind of like compressors such as the 76 and the LA2A for this application. Make sure the gain staging is correct. And as you can see, I'm not taking a lot off of it, because the problem with one mic drums is when you overcompress them, the cymbals become really loud and kind of abrasive on the ear, so you want to be careful. You also don't want to totally destroy what little transients there are. Okay. So, next thing we're going to do is try to deal with the fact that these drums sound very narrow. And we're going to do this by kind of simulating a drum room. So we're going to create a stereo aux input, call it verb, and send some signal to it. And then for this, you can really use any reverb, because we're not going for some, deep and lush and modulated sound. I'm going to use the R verb, but this could easily be done with the D verb. Just the standard Pro Tools reverb. Generally, you can go in and find a nice room setting and set a very short decay time, less than a second usually. Alright, you can kind of hear and as you can see, if you're listening with headphones or good monitors, there's now a little bit of stereo presence to the kit. Obviously, we don't want to push it too much unless you want that effect, but I like to use it very subtly, just so it's widening out the drum sound. It's not even supposed to be identifiable as reverb, even. And I might actually damp this reverb a little to take down some of those low frequencies, because I kind of like the kick to be in the center. Maybe put some low frequencies back in. Alright, I would probably tweak that more in a mix, but I think for the example that's sounding pretty good. Okay, now that the reverb's dialed in, I'm going to show you how to get more of a kick sound out of one mic drums. And this can be the biggest issue when you record with one mic, is the kick isn't there and it has no definition. So here's a way to get around that. In this case, I've created a mono aux and a send to it. What's going on is I'm shelving out everything that isn't the kick drum. So if I mute this track and make this pre-fader, you can hear exactly what's happening on this auxiliary track. We'll call this kick 2. You'll notice it's just the low end of the kick. So from here I could do a bunch of additive EQ and get a big kind of fluffy, muddy kick tone, or we could use this fantastic free plugin called MH Thump to kind of create a kick drum for us. And it's going to be triggered from the signal that's coming from the bus. And you're going to want to shelf out all the frequencies that aren't the kick. Otherwise, the snare drum and the cymbals will start to trigger metric halo thump, and it's just going to go boop, 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 boop. You know, it's not going to give you a solid kick drums. Okay, next we're going to put on metric halo thump and then just use the preset sub thump. I found this to be a fantastic preset for this application. You can tune the frequency of your bass drum. I like to keep basically what they had, maybe like 90 and 60, 65 in there, and then usually about a 70% wet dry mix. And that's going to give you this. So as you can already hear, more of a pumping kick drum sound. And then we're just going to compress this quickly, and we'll be on our way. So that's kind of giving us a little more sub bass for our kick. So let's mix that back in with the original drums and see what we have. Without. Now with. As you can see, you got a little bit more sub presence. That can come in very useful because the bottom end of the kick can sometimes get lost when you do these one mic drums. Okay, now that we've boosted the kick drum a little bit, we're going to parallel compress the drums with another mix bus. This is a very common method for getting stuff to sound very tight and punchy. It's sometimes called New York compression. It's pretty simple. We're essentially just going to send signal to this, we're going to call this drum bus, and compress it fairly aggressively, and then probably do some clipping on it. In this case, we'll use the BF76 and actually get pretty aggressive. Maybe taking close to 7 decibels off. Next, we're going to follow that up with some JST clip to get it really crunchy. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to want to mix this low so it's kind of supporting the original drum track but isn't doing that thing I said earlier about sounding too compressed. Alright, that's sounding good. Now let's just tweak the final levels and we'll have somewhat of a rough drum mix. Maybe a little more reverb. Alright, and I think the last thing I want to do is maybe add a little bit of clipping or maximization to this track. I'm using JST clip, but there's earlier I was using JST clip, however you can use Maxim, which is a very handy maximizer in Pro Tools to accomplish this too, and this is just to push the initial track a little more and get it sounding real compressed. Now, let's level that again and we should be done. And there you have it. We did a few easy steps to take these one mic drums and make them sound a little punchier. Alright, let's do a comparison. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you liked it, definitely subscribe and check out my channel for more music and audio related content. Until next time, peace.